Is in order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone, and let the roll reflect that all members are present and a quorum has been established. Tonight we have a proclamation to read for Make Music Day, which is actually tomorrow, summer solstice, and we will start with Councilmember Vaughn.
Whereas the City of Hastings has declared Tuesday, June 21st as Make Music Day, and
whereas this is the 6th year the City of Hastings has celebrated Make Music Day. Make Music Day is a free celebration of music around the world on June 21st, beginning in 1982 in France, and is now held on the same day each year in more than 1,000 cities in 120 countries. And
whereas the purpose of Make Music Day is to encourage and invite Hastings residents and visitors to celebrate by enjoying free performances, cultivating civic pride, and a sense of community. And
whereas Make Music Day 2022 will be held 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at various Hastings parks, and the full schedule can be found on the City of Hastings webpage and social media platforms. And
whereas in case of inclement weather, Make Music Day will be held at the Hastings Civic Arena. And
whereas local and metro area bands and soloists will be donating their performance, and volunteers are donating their time to help coordinate the event. The City of Hastings is appreciative of these civic-minded performers and volunteers to help make this event possible. And
now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Hastings hereby declares June 21st, 2022 as Make Music Day in Hastings, Minnesota. Okay, tonight we have a presentation for a certification of appreciation for Commissioner Martha Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. It's my honor today to present a certificate of appreciation to our outgoing HEDRA member, Martha Sullivan. Martha's been serving on the HEDRA Commission for the last 6 years. HEDRA is the Hastings Economic Development and Redevelopment Authority, as you all know. A lot of folks might not understand exactly what goes into serving on this board. This is a board that's really in charge of economic development and redevelopment throughout the city. They're the people that take on the projects that nobody wants to take on from an economic development standpoint. The private market won't touch these type of projects, but these have service and they have benefit to the city, kind of like the big project we've been working on for years, the Confluence Hudson project, but also the industrial park, our loan programs, and downtown redevelopment. So Martha's service to us and her background as an attorney has been invaluable as we've looked through development contracts and the minutia of what we have to do to make sure things are done the way they should be. So we wanted to thank Martha for her service over 6 years, wish her the best in the future. And Martha, if you'd like to come up here, please. I've got a certificate for you from the mayor and from myself to thank you for your service.
Thank you, Martha. And tonight, our Hastings Arts Task Force has a representative, Barb Hollenbeck, and she will give us an update. Welcome, Barb.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm Barb Hollenbeck, and I am the chair of the Hastings Art Task Force. And I thank you for this opportunity to bring our findings forward to you tonight. So before I get into our findings or recommendations, I'd like to give a little bit background on the Arts Task Force itself. So we were convened, or the city put out a call for applicants to serve on the Hastings Arts Task Force. 17 applicants applied for 7 positions, which is almost unheard of for a city commission. That means there's just a lot of interest in that position wanting the a task force or an organization to go forward to serve the community. So we thought that was, and then the people that have supported it have been very passionate about providing and promoting arts in the city of Hastings. Among the members on our task force was a wide, diverse group of people, medical people, educator, small business owner, and artists. So a new resident even volunteered to be on a commission, which is extraordinary. So, okay, is this one work? Yeah. Okay, I thought I was, but, and our task was to come up with a structural organization for an arts organization. We had a deadline. We had to get our budget proposal in so it could be included in this budget cycle. The task force members agreed, because they wanted it to go forward, to meet twice a month. So for the past 5 months, we have met twice a month doing our work. They have been dedicated. Everybody showed up to the meetings. We came out with some really fabulous ideas, and we hope the city will adopt them. And we're ready to stand with the city council to make it happen. So with that, our goal was, we had 2 goals. One was to identify a form of organization or a structure for an organization to go forward. The other one was, once we identified our organizational structure, to come up with a work plan. So I'm here tonight to reveal those recommendations. So our task force decided early on that the city of Hastings really needed to adopt a Arts and Cultural Commission. The Arts and Cultural Commission would be relevant and helpful to grow the community and grow the city, grow the commerce, make it more visible, or build the Hastings brand. And we thought we could accomplish that, and then also to build a legacy and celebrate the rich Hastings history. So we felt that was all beneficial to both our residents, tourism, and visitors, business. So on that note, so we did adopt a commission format. We drafted a series of documents. One of them included the charter document. So we have an ordinance document that's in place and is ready for circumspect inspection by the city council, and then a work plan. So the city council, or our city, we just feel that the role of the Arts and Culture Commission would be there to help promote the city of Hastings by elevating its image, by using public art and our cultural activities to instill a better brand, make it more visible, more viable for, not that it's bad, but we can always use more people, we could use more workers, we could use more tourism, and we felt that the Arts and Culture Commission could do all that through its role. And let's see. And one of the things that we wanted to do is by collaborating with different organizations, even within the city, and then other entities within the city and in the arts world to help fulfill those goals and objectives. So let's see. So we wanted to, a lot of our things are collaborative in nature, working with other departments. And then we also saw the function as the Arts and Cultural Commission in a role to review policies, such as we could sit on, have a role in the Highway 61 rebuild with the Vermillion Street corridor, making sure components are in there, possibly brick that carries through, elements from downtown, making sure that rebuild really identifies, and you know you're going through Hastings by some of the landmarks and attributes that are included in the Highway 61 rebuild and then the Vermillion Street corridor. So that would be one role that the Arts and Culture Commission could be active in a review process. And then on the cultural side, we felt perhaps there's a new festival, a new group wants to come to town and create a new festival. We thought the Arts and Culture Commission could be instrumental in kind of that early stages of planning the festival. And I know as a there's a lot of pieces when you're going to put together a festival, and to make it a more smooth transition for both parties, both the city and the festival originator. So we thought that would be a role for the Arts and Culture Commission also. And then, so the other goal would be our work plan. So we have a pretty robust work plan. It's got some really interesting features. Some are going to cost some money, and some are pretty low-key, like one of our collaborative adventures is to help promote the art groups to get together and have like meet and greets so they can talk and they can know what each other is working on, and it helps spur other conversations and other projects. And oh, what a great idea, can we work together on this and promote and then really highlight the arts and benefit our community. So that was one role. Another one was, we have all these wonderful memorial benches along the river and in our parks. And I personally, when I'm going by and I read the names, I thought, wouldn't it be nice to know more about these people? And now we have the technology called a QR code, so we could embed the QR code, or not embed it, but add it to the plaque. People could scan it with their phone and they could read about the person that this bench was dedicated to. Not a lot of money, takes a little bit of manpower to operate that. We also have the idea to work with Ardent Mills to perhaps investigate opportunities to turn some of their large concrete facades into a mural or some other focal point for the community. I know Mankato did it, and there's been other instances of other cities doing that, and heck, if Mankato can do it, we certainly should be able to. So, and how cool would that be for Hastings and that elevator along 61, and what a draw that would be for, I mean, just something really cool. One other one was to help identify and plan a use for the old Blue Bridge that's sitting in River Flats. So, and that could be a piece that could highlight Hastings' history and connection to the river. So we have a really robust work plan. There's some really cool things in there. So, you know, with a work plan, you need a budget. You need a budget to carry out some of those goals. So we have identified the use of a percentage point, 1% of the city's capital improvement plan, which in the 2022 budget equated to $58,000. And that would be allocated to the Arts and Culture Commission to, we have a lot that we could use the funds for. We would like to identify and catalog all the art assets in the city of Hastings. And then once you identify them, catalog them, you need a maintenance plan. So that would be useful in that. And then maintain the Riverwalk, maintain and develop the Riverwalk with public art. I know we had started with the Riverwalk and public art, but there's areas where it says there's art, but there's no art. So it'd be nice to get some of that back and to kind of grow it into the future and develop that. And then, I mean, we put so much money into the riverfront and the redevelopment of downtown to explore and provide new pieces and permanent pieces. It would just be a feather in our cap. It would be the river walk. It could be the river art walk. So we have a lot of really cool ideas, and we need money. Money's always important. And then, unfortunately, it's kind of goes with the territory. And also, as part of the Arts and Culture Commission, we could advocate and seek out corporate sponsors, private sponsors, grant writing, and all that extra funds would be given back to the people of Hastings through wonderful pieces of art and cultural activities, mostly art, for the entire city to enjoy. And in addition to the budgeting, then we also would need a staff person. So to have a staff liaison person, we've written a job description and have had an incentive or a stipend that could be offered to existing staff. The stipend would be a $5,000 salary annually, and the job description would call for a 5-hour work schedule. So not a huge amount of work, but we realize it's always work to have a staff person, and that takes resources. So that was, we were trying to eliminate any kind of barriers and make it easy for the city to implement, because it would just be a benefit for the city of Hastings. And then staffing, and if there was no staff members that wanted to take advantage of the stipend, it could be written up as for an independent contractor for possibly a retired person or a retired teacher to come in and fill that role as staff liaison. So we hope we've covered a lot of our bases, and we just felt it was important to make it as easy as possible and have lots of options and opportunities to make this a reality for Hastings. So I feel with a little bit of resources, both time of a staff person and money, that we could really have a huge benefit for the city of Hastings, for tourism, for the residents, and just elevate our brand throughout the region. So I can stand for any questions, and I'm looking forward to making this a reality.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Great update. You've all worked really hard on this, and I stepped into one of your meetings, and there's a lot of energy and positivity, and I think, it'd be great to bring it into the community as well. So, council discussion, Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Barb, for stepping up and chairing the Arts Task Force. It's been such a pleasure to work with the group, and I just wanted to recognize the others that are here. Barb had said that, that they've been meeting for the last 5 months, twice a month, and it's 2 hours each time, and so it's been a huge commitment. That's at least 20 hours, not to mention all of the research that the individual members were doing on the side, the reading, the bringing the forward ideas, and doing side work. And so it has been a tremendous amount of effort. And so, Barb, could you introduce the others that are here with you today?
Hastings Arts Task Force members. Here we are.
Yeah.
Stephen Reed. Why don't you guys come up and introduce yourselves?
Stephen Reed. And Travis Lockwood.
And I'm Katie Walt.
Thank you. And this is just half of the group. There was actually...
Correct, yep.
Yeah, and so, so thank you for coming today. And so we just had a budget conversation, and I realized that it felt a little overwhelming in that budget conversation, looking at all of the needs to the city's infrastructure. But I truly believe that this is an opportunity for us to leverage, the 1% of the CIP that's being requested, and it's gonna have a huge impact, I think, to tourism, to bringing, folks from outside of the community in, once we begin to have a lot of wins and successes with this group. And I think that there's a lot of, commitment, obviously, from the individuals that have been on this group, but then furthermore, the HBAC community that we have here between Hastings and Prescott. And I just think that we could have just a wonderful opportunity to move forward and really So the Hastings just isn't a river town, so as Barb was saying, that it's also known for its arts and culture. So I just wanted to open up with that, and thank you again, and I would ask for other thoughts for the rest of the council. I was considering that we should perhaps send this to one of the committees of the council for further conversation, because there's a lot of detail in the ordinance, but a tremendous amount of work has gone into drafting the language that they have presented before you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. So my questions, and I'm not sure, might be you, Councilmember Fulch, to answer this. So this 1% of the CIP stands a little bit different than our other commissions, right? We don't have a budget for our other commissions. So it's new to me. HEDRA's not really It is. Yeah, HEDRA has separate revenue source. Yeah. So, yeah, not really a budget per se. So my question would be, I love it. I think we all know I'm a huge fan of the arts. I always wish I were talented. I'm not. Can't sing, can't dance, but do love to go and enjoy all of those things. That being said, what would prevent if we go from an arts task force to the commission, as we've discussed, bringing those ideas to the council for consideration, as opposed to budgeting for ideas that you're going to come up with? Is that anyone, I mean, I'm just getting my head around, as Councilmember Fulch pointed out, sitting upstairs, it's overwhelming, the money needed to run a city and keep your taxes down. It's overwhelming. Something I never knew anything about prior to 6 years ago, where my money goes and how very little of it there is. So wanting to make all the right decisions, and that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? We represent all of you. So we try to bring all these voices, I think, to our workshops and to our discussions to say, okay, but what about this and what about this? And we understand there's money to be made in the arts. Absolutely. It's, we've seen some very strong data on that, and we know there's money to be brought to the city as a result of the arts. But going back to the, still looking for the pool of money, how do we make it work? And I know 1% doesn't seem like a whole lot. But when we're talking about your roads needing to wait another year, another 2 years, another 3 years, so that we can get to your roads. And for the record, your roads aren't just about being smooth and nice driving. There's infrastructure underneath there that needs to get the sewer out of your house and get the water into your house, and your fire hydrants in case you have a fire. I mean, there's so much money involved. So that, my head is spinning from our workshop. So maybe you can help me understand, why wouldn't we just have this great group of, wonderfully motivated, artists and community members bring those things to us and request them? Where are we at with that?
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Councilmember
Go ahead.
Liefeld. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's so that the group has an operating budget, so that as they begin to move forward and want to take on projects, so that they have a budget to work within the upcoming year, and they know and they can figure out. I'm going to actually call on Stephen here. Stephen has such a tremendous amount of knowledge and talent. I can't tell you how impressed I am with every individual person who has been on this task force, and Stephen is one of them. And so, Stephen, would you like to provide a little background on the research that you found in regards to what other communities are doing and where that 1% came from?
Yeah. So the 1% for the arts is not a foreign concept. Most large universities have it. A lot of cities do. We took our framework from what the city of Duluth has been doing. And the nice thing about doing the 1% of the arts is that it does create that nice operation budget. That's a starting point for us, is really what that comes down to. And that's why we would seek the public, the private, and the corporate and grants. And there's a lot of that to be held. But that just helps get us going. And it gives, the nice thing about that 1% and building that into the structure is that it is able to keep the ball rolling. And it gives the group and it gives the commission, as it grows and develops forward, It gives them something that they can rely on and that they know that they can build upon. And it's all about helping to build up the city even more. And so with all that stuff, it just keeps her going.
Thank you, Stephen. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Liefeld, I know where you're coming from. It's a dedicated funding source. That's what it sounds like we're asking for. We don't get that from any other commissions or groups. I actually support this model that they're trying to propose. But ultimately, when we come down, we all just came out of a budget workshop, we're going to make some tough decisions. But that's not saying that we shouldn't have good input from our residents. And I made a note here, we could work better with all of our commissions, and every one of our commissions could be bringing good data, good information up to us, so we have to make that hard decision of how we're going to spend those dollars. I'm not ready to support a dedicated funding source. I can support getting a commission started funding, because otherwise, if we support 1% dedicated to this, you're going to see a youth association, everybody's going to start commissions because they want to get a dedicated funding source to it. I think that's where it's hard for me to swallow that, but I'm all about getting it up and running. And I mean, 17 applicants is the most I've ever seen, I think, in all my commission interest. So that's fantastic that we have that much interest. So we need to empower them. Let's get them started. Let's figure out what that's going to cost. But I seen in the notes here, I think it should go to a committee of council. Hash out some details here. We got a lot of information brought to us. I heard a lot of stuff from Barb that I got some questions with stipends, and can we even do that with city staff? There's a lot of unanswers in here for me, but I support it. I think we need to move it forward. I can't commit to dedicated funding today, but I think it's a start, because I think you're right. Councilor Lund was referencing HEDRA. That's a levy. We levy those dollars. Now, if we want to levy these dollars, that's a different discussion. Then we're going to go to the voters, which I think we should. So ultimately, I think it's a great idea, but I think it's got to get to a committee to hash out some details. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fox.
Your Honor, I absolutely agree with Councilmember Vaughn. I think this should move to a committee of council to discuss. But it's no secret that arts creates such a vitality for communities, and that this would be something that would build up our tourism and build up our community and build up our infrastructure. So I'm very excited to see this moving forward, and thank you for all of your work, committee members, task force committee members. And I would like to move it to a committee.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Lund. Oh, I'm sorry, Brox.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Fox, was that a motion? Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion to move this to a committee as the Planning Commission. Committee of the council. Just making sure we're doing it right.
Second, Your Honor.
And a second with Councilmember Liefeld. Additional discussion, Councilmember Brox.
Thank you. I was just going to ask a question about the structure, and I also would say I support the overall work plan and the ideas presented. I'm also appreciative of all the work that's been done. So when I ask these questions, I don't want it to make it sound like a downer. I'm just trying to flesh out the details for myself and anybody who would be interested. But when we talk about the capital improvement plan, typically we're talking about one-time expenses. So the way the city of Hastings, why we've budgeted is that we try to do capital items with one-time dollars, and that usually comes from our local government aid from the state, and then we have operational expenses, and we're trying to, those operational expenses are all the day-to-day operations of the city. So what I'm trying to understand here is this sounds like it is going to be an ongoing commission. So it would exist year to year. And my only question with kind of categorizing it as part of the CIP, does that mean that it's limited in years? Is it really an operational expense, or is it really a capital expense? That's what I'm trying to understand, so that if we do decide in committee that we're gonna fund it, if it's going to be year by year, I just wanna make sure the funding source that we're assigning to it is year by year, and it's not a one-time fund. And the other question I had for Dan specifically was, the last time we had a conversation about this, there was no staff person available to do the work. So I appreciate the description and all the details that went into this. What is the status of that? Is there somebody available at this time to do that work? Or do you see someone else needing to fill that role from outside of city staff at this time?
Although I recognize that there may be some ability for staff support, and it may a little bit ebb and flow depending on, who happens to be available this month or something. Really, I do not see ongoing staff available to take on something new. Right now, I think that most of our staff and departments are basically maxed out, and anticipate, doesn't mean that they'll get it in the budget, but I anticipate nearly every department asking for additional staff, not additional projects.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Lightfoot.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was clarifying with our city attorney and was confused on the piece. They wouldn't be able to spend that money on their own. That still has to come to the city. So even if we were to budget this money, the money would be sitting there. So then it goes back to my first question of why the budget? Because they have to bring it to us to spend it anyway. That's where I was confused, was, so, and they're all nodding their heads, so they understand that as a,
Can I make a point of clarity?
please.
The other focus here is that we wanted to have, so that if any project came up, that there is a dedicated, that at least 1% of that project needs to go to the arts of whatever that is. So if there was a new building put in, a new city building or something, that 1% of all of that work on that building would need to look, how is the arts considered in making of this building? How does that impact the people that are coming and going into the building? So the point is to have a dedicated fund of whatever project that happens here that is going to the arts aspect of that building or project.
Excellent. Thanks for the clarification.
Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. What I was just going to say is that, just having that budget set aside in the next year allows them to be able to have the flexibility to actually plan out for the upcoming year, because we all know, right, if you don't have it in the upcoming budget cycle, then you have to wait for the following year, right? So it's a set aside for them to be able to do that. And then furthermore, when you think about all the other commissions that the city has, like parks as a for instance, what's the budget for the Parks Department? Like $1 million a year. And then planning, is seeing all the new developments, the city's new infrastructure projects that are coming through. Those are huge ticket items. HEDRA, I don't even know what HEDRA's is, but that's a percentage of the tax base. I think it's like 1% of the tax base. I don't sit on HEDRA. I can't remember what the funding stream is, but it's something to that sense. And then public safety, that covers all of police and fire. So all the other commissions do actually help feed in and provide guidance to other major departments in planning. And so this is unique in that aspect, that no one's covering the arts. And it just goes to show why it is that we've had the big blue piece of the old bridge down by the river for the last 9 years, is because no one's planning for the arts. There hasn't been any, funding that's been set aside for those special projects. Heck, the mural alone was $13,000, and how many years did that have to roll forward before we finally got that done? So it's just, for instances, why they're asking for that money. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Councilmember Fulch, I think you point out something that's unique about this, and kind of where I'm struggling, and I don't know if we need to belabor this too much more, because it does need to go and get discussed, but I'm not on that committee, so I want to make sure that you hear this. There isn't an art department. There isn't a culture department, and so we have this nice setup here of a parks department with a parks commission. So the commission doesn't have a budget. The parks department has a budget, and the commission is a resource for the parks department to help vet things and move things along and get them to the point where they can, possibly become a budgeted item. I don't foresee us adding another department where all this work would just logically flow. So I have this like little decision tree here written down, and it's basically any project that your commission comes up with may actually fit over there this time, and over there this time, and over there this time. So, it may be a parks thing one time, and then it could be a, community development thing that, whatever. It could fit lots of different molds. And so that's where I think it does become challenging to how do you staff it and how do you fund it. I'm not saying it shouldn't be either one of those, but I don't know if just saying, we're gonna have so-and-so staff it or whatever makes a lot of sense. It may be based on the agenda items that you have representation from parks that time or whatever. I don't know. Because I don't see us adding another staff person based on what we just heard from Dan too. So just think about that as you go into it, this isn't necessarily gonna just funnel straight. We just heard, when you're building a new building, consider us. Consider arts and culture and how that impacts, because it's a piece of it, so, anyway.
Thank you, Councilmember Lund. Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor, and it sounds like it's hopefully headed to a committee, and I'm on that committee, so I got a question for Travis, but I think also I want to let my colleagues know, those are the questions I think we'll ask, but I don't think it can be all over here. It's got to be fairly strategic to be effective. So I think that'll be the questions I'll be asking in the committee meeting, saying, what's year one, what's year two, and what do we do to get to there to make it effective for the community? The only thing and a question for Travis, you mentioned the 1%. I just want to verify, is that in public buildings, or was the commission, I'm just getting my notes ready, because I don't know how far it would be to make a developer to put 1% of their development into the arts. That's why I want to verify if the group discussed that, or is that something we need to discuss, that we ask all developers to put 1% into their project. That's going to be a committee, that'll be discussed before it comes back to this.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. Just to clarify, it's not 1% of private development. It would just be, Travis was giving an example, if, we don't have any major facilities that are really coming up other than like the ice arena, for instance. And so, but like if we were going to do a new fire hall or something like that, just 1% of that fund for all of the construction to be considered for some kind of public art piece as it's being developed. But what I just wanted to, and going back to Councilmember Lund's question, so the task force is asking for a $5,000 stipend to be used to, just to augment staff by bringing in, we have so many talented retired teachers and folks within our community that may be interested in taking on this kind of role. And I think what's really different from the other commissions is that the folks who are on the commission want to do a lot of the work. They want to get their hands dirty. They want to help with grant writing and getting, organizational pieces done within the community and relationship building and such. And so I think it's really going to be a unique group where we're going to see a lot of in-kind donation coming from those people who are actually on the commission, whereas all the other existing commissions that we currently have, they're just vetting ideas for the most part. There's not a lot of work that the individuals who are on the other commissions are doing, if that makes sense. And so I think that there's an opportunity to leverage a lot of volunteer and kind time.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. So there is a motion on the floor by Councilmember Fox and a second by Councilmember Liefeld. Discussion has been had. This will go, or the motion is to send to Planning Committee of Council, and that is Councilmember Fulch as chairman, Liefeld, and Vaughn. So with that, all those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you all, and we'll look forward to seeing more of you. Council members, are there any corrections to the minutes from the regular meeting on June 6th? Okay. Comments from the audience. At this time, we'll take public comments from the audience, and they've either been emailed. If they've been emailed, council has received them. If you'd like to speak to us, please step to the podium, give your name, address, and if there's anyone on Zoom, same thing, use the raised hand feature, and we will bring you in after the chamber's discussion has been had. Welcome.
Welcome. My name is Brandon Spillman. I live at 125 West 18th Street here in town. I'm up here today to talk about the KFC that's going to be coming into town. Wrote a little speech. I'm nervous. This ain't my cup of tea here, but a few things I wanted to say, so I wrote them down here. But I live off 18th Street. I've lived there since 1995. I raised my family. You've seen a few of my kids. You know, like I said, I've lived in this neighborhood since 1995. This is the same neighborhood I'm raising my kids in. One thing I know is change is inevitable, right? We got to change. Hastings got to grow. I understand that. One thing that I'm really having trouble with that KFC is the traffic. I know Planning Commission has approved a plan to allow traffic on residential streets, okay? And if that does go through, that it would be the only location in town that is taking place. So our biggest thing is traffic, and today we're hoping that you guys would consider denying their motion to pass this up to the state or whoever it goes to for approval, send it back down to Planning Commission and have them rewrite that, put the traffic somewhere else. There's no reason to put that much traffic onto 18th Street. If you look up KFC and how much customers they typically get in a given day is 4,000, right? Which I don't think that would happen in Hastings, but even half that number, 2,000 customers coming through that place, that is a lot of traffic for a residential street. So again, I think you guys should really deny it and push it back down to Planning Commission. So, thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, Mayor and
Welcome.
City Council. Thank you for having us. My name is Marcy. I live at 122 18th Street West, the little yellow house on the corner that would abut right up to the planned KFC on that corner. Now, I was not born and bred in Hastings, nor to public speaking, so you'll have to forgive me for both and hopefully welcome me to it. Thank you for taking some time to listen to us. We appreciate that very much. We had the opportunity to go to the Planning Committee last Monday and to talk a little bit with them and to understand the proposed site of the KFC on that corner, and got our questions answered. Everyone was very amicable and kindly walked us through that process. So that was a lot of good information for us to learn, and so is this evening, so thank you. Like I said, I am the homeowner of that little yellow house that abuts to the proposed KFC, more specifically, right up to the drive-through. And as I mentioned to the Planning Committee, we understand that the development of this corridor is both necessary and inevitable. We do not oppose progress or the development, but are in agreement with the dissenting vote last week at the Planning Committee that the KFC is not an appropriate business that fits with the corridor plan. We have been reviewing the Vermillion corridor plan, and it's an amazing project and an amazing amount of work from the Planning Committee. And I think they've been spending years on it, from what I understand. But we agree with the dissenting vote. First, a couple of reasons why. First, Hastings has always been both celebrated and paid humble homage to its past. We all have in our homes a picture of the old spiral bridge, right? Do we still have that spiral bridge in Hastings? We do not. We have that beautiful modern structure that looks so beautiful against that western sunset. I love walking down at that riverfront and enjoying that. But we also smile every July when it must bend its knee to the cycle of time and turn off its lights for the mayflies in July, right? Do we drive home along 61 and to the grocery store to the north, to the south of the city, and to the beautiful riverfront without looking at those abandoned buildings all along that corridor? And remember the shops and the people who own those businesses? We do. Do we dwell in small houses along 18th Street, which were built for large families on small footprints, hopes and memories held close within those four walls? We do. And yet we still welcome change with open arms. And if we look through that proposed plan that the Planning Committee and the City Council, I'm sure, have worked on for years now, we see in the proposal beautiful pictures of the existing historic buildings like the one we're in right now. I love seeing this building as I come over that bridge into town. And in the proposed corridor plan, the new buildings were to be similar in this design and in this architecture structure. We don't feel that the proposed KFC building would fit into that. And so we're a little befuddled as to why it's being considered. It is a stark contrast from what the proposed plan would like. So the dissenting Planning Committee member was correct. It doesn't fit into that Vermillion corridor plan. Second, the proposed drive-through business model doesn't fit with the corridor planning as the dissenting vote highlighted, because the Planning Committee and the City Council, as you're working hard to allocate these resources to the corridor, I would hope you would do so with an eye towards winning in this situation, not just putting something there that is obviously not going to work over time. And this is how we know. The proposed KFC is going to shove, I think, millions of dollars, energy and time and resources that are in short supply into a losing proposition. At the planning meeting, I pointed out that the Freedom gas station is no longer on that corner, proving it is very difficult to run a successful business on that corner. And even this one as it's proposed. The committee's rebuttal was that they decided on planning in relation to the city, not on the business model of the corporation making the proposal. But this is an obvious observation to consider. We had a KFC in Hastings before, and now we don't. Why not? Do they take out large revenue stores from places? No. Obviously, it wasn't a large revenue store, and we can deduce that they closed it because it was a losing proposition. And whether that decision was based on loss of revenues or lack of working business model to abide by OSHA standards, that's for KFC to own too. We don't know, and I'm sure they won't say. But we know they've not changed their business model to a winning one because their first decision is to put a drive-through abutting a residential neighborhood onto an obsolescent intersection. And I understand that the future plans may try to remedy this by adding a stoplight in that intersection. But any observer can see that this will only add to the long wait times in the drive-through, which is how fast food restaurants determine the workability and the profitability of their stores, right? And it will cause backups on an emergency use through street, which is what 18th Street is. So, it could be blocking potential emergency use. And it's a dangerous entrance and exit onto Highway 61 right there. Again, it's not a winning business model for a fast food restaurant. And the proposal is only setting itself up for a loss, not just to the corridor plan, but also for the residents on the 18th Street and to the people trying to get through on 61. It doesn't make any sense. Lastly, and I'll close with this, Hastings has many other fast food options for drive-throughs. Places with more traffic for market, better entrance and exit points, and it's strictly designed for commercial use. And if the KFC wants back in this market, I don't understand why they wouldn't choose a winning spot instead of one that's going to lose. Seems to me that would be a better allocations of everybody's resources, and we can keep that Vermillion corridor plan as it's being proposed, and then all of us can feel like we have a win. So, thank you for your time.
Forgot something. We did start a petition. We do have 161 people that have currently signed it. It hasn't been up very long, but I imagine the numbers will grow. So, appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the council? You. Just please state your name and your address.
We are Tony and Lynn Bingy. We just moved here a couple of years ago to 115 17th Street West, right behind the new dairy building. And we share about 100 feet of property line with the proposed site. We have a bigger lot than typically. We're directly behind Marcy. Tonight we've heard many concerns about a fast food business at 61 and 18th Street. My wife and I concur with these major annoyances and would like to go on record as such. Additionally to these concerns, we're concerned about the dumpster odor from a food business and the undesirable critters that it attracts. But our major concern is one of health. We have, as I said, a long lot line with the proposed property, with our house being situated close to that property line. We're worried about cars sitting in the drive-through, idling their engines to keep cool on a hot day like today, or to keep warm in the wintertime. So it would be a yearly thing, having 4 or 5 cars idling in the drive-through lane and all that carbon monoxide coming through our yard, over our fence and through the yard. I don't know, I guess I heard 2,000 cars. I don't know, is that annually or?
KFC has an average of 4,000 customers a day. That is taking every KFC in the United States, combining them by.
Oh, okay, so, all right. Thank you. Surely we'll be exposed to a higher level of carbon monoxide. We would have to limit our time on our backyard deck all summer long. As our air quality goes down, so does our property value. After all, who would want to raise a family with a situation like that? And we also wish that you would deny this or spend a lot of time considering it. I thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council at this time on any issue other than Kentucky Fried or any other comments to the council? Okay, we thank you all for your comments. Council members, are there any council items to be considered? Okay, council, I would accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councilmember Lund and Councilmember Brox. Discussion? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. For this item, we have a presentation by our independent financial auditors at Bergen KDV. And welcome.
Sure.
Mayor, members of the council, I'm Chris Idemiller, Finance Manager. I'd just like to introduce Nancy Schulzettenberg from Bergen.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for giving me some time tonight to go over the results of our audit for the year ended December 31st, 2021. So I want to start out by talking about the several different communications that we have with the city as a result of that audit, starting with the independent auditor's report. This is housed in the front of the annual financial report that you received and includes a lot of discussion about what is an audit, where do the responsibilities lie, and the most important piece of it is the opinion on the financial statements. And what we're issuing is an unmodified opinion, which indicates that those financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects based on the results of the audit. So a clean opinion, if you will. And then because of some of the funding that you receive as a city, we are required to follow what are called government auditing standards. And these are a little bit more intense than the generally accepted auditing standards. They require us to take a closer look at internal controls of the city. We're looking at those controls and understanding those controls and not giving an opinion on them. And then we also look at compliance with laws, regulations, contracts, grants, and other matters. And based on the work that we did in accordance with those standards, we have one internal control finding, which is the lack of segregation of accounting duties. So just one this year, which is different from previous years. So that's good to see. And it is at a middle level finding. We as auditors have 3 different levels of findings, the most severe being a material weakness, which would lend to the opportunity for a material misstatement in the financial statements. And then we have significant deficiencies, which is where your lack of segregation of accounting duties lies. It is less severe than that material weakness, but does still warrant attention by you as the governing board, just to be remain aware and diligent in your duties that you perform as a council. And then we did not have any compliance findings related to those standards. And then our last official letter is the report on Minnesota legal compliance. The Office of the State Auditor on an annual basis issues guidance for auditors across the state as far as the statutes that they would like us to look into as they relate to accounting matters. So the categories are listed on the slide here. I'm not going to list those all for you. You can take a read through them. But based on the work that we did there, we had no findings related to that compliance. So just really the one written finding, so congratulations for that. Then moving on to the financial analysis, which you will find in the communication letter, the separate document that we issued, starting with the general fund and the fund balance. We have 5-year perspectives in some of these charts. We're really going to key in tonight on 2020 versus 2021, just to kind of keep things moving along and at a high level. So overall, fund balance did increase just over $1 million, or about 12.9% for the year. And what you see here is that the last 2 years, there have been some nice increases in the fund balance in the general fund. The green portion, which is the largest portion, is the unassigned, and that's what's available for future spending for the city. And you do have a policy surrounding that number, which indicates you'll maintain 35 to 45% of next year's budgeted expenditures in that number. So at the end of the year, you were at 53.4% in that number compared to the 2022 budgeted expenditures. Taking a look then at the details of how we came to that increase in your fund balance, starting with the changes in the revenues, we have 2 pie charts here that take a look at the sources of revenue. And when we look at the percentages year over year, they're really very consistent. There are some fluctuations. Taxes and assessments is up a bit with the increase in the levy. Some of the other categories decreasing because of that. When we look at overall, the revenues increased about $1.7 million for 2021. And this chart takes a look at the categories in real dollars and then has the 5-year perspective there. So I mentioned that it was up about $1.7 million. Several pieces played into that increase. So first of all, your taxes and assessments up about 1.5 with the increase in the levy. The licenses and permits up $167,000. 2020 saw a reduction in the liquor licenses, not charging those based on the pandemic. Those returned in 2021, so that's where that increase is coming from. The intergovernmental revenues were up just under $300,000 related to the Highway 316 funding that you received. And then offsetting those increases, you did have a couple of decreases. First of all, in charges for services related to some of the in-house engineering fees decreased for 2021. And then investment income, the far right in the miscellaneous is where that is housed. Just due to the market conditions, you had a big decrease in your investment income for the year. Switching gears then to the expenditures, overall, those were also up. And the big change that you see in these two pie charts is in the capital outlay category. So in 2020, that was 6% of your total expenditures for the year, increased to 15% in 2021 as a result of all of the Highway 316, or 361, sorry, 316, it's 316, right? Yeah. The result of those expenditures being in that category. So the increase in that category is what is driving the decrease in all of the other categories. And then similar to the revenues, looking at those in actual dollar amounts, expenditures were up about 1.8 million for the year. So a little bit outpacing the increase in the revenues. And two categories that were the biggest drivers of that increase. First of all, your public safety was up about 367, and that was due to just normal salary increases. So you had an increase in your steps and lanes, and then you also had an increase in the hours worked in those categories, those public safety categories. So that being your largest funding source, that 366 isn't as big as it could have been in some of the other categories. And then finally, your capital outlay is the other big driver in the increase, up 1.3 million, again related to the Highway 316 work that was done. And we see that across so many different departments of the city. Now, the next chart takes a look at your actual revenues and expenditures and then compares them to the budget or your plan for the year. And if we look at the far right column, the variance column, you can see that revenues were under budget about 7.5% or just under 1.2 million. The largest difference came in the intergovernmental revenues. And now, although we saw increases related to Highway 316, you didn't need, or not as much came in that intergovernmental revenues. You didn't need as much as you had anticipated. The city's share was smaller than what the original plan was. So you have an under budget revenue in the intergovernmental revenues category. Other categories not significantly different. If we look at charges for services, that again is driven by that in-house engineering difference that we saw in the decrease in charges for services, and then property taxes a little bit higher than you anticipated based on better collections during the year. On the expenditure side of things, those were under budget as well, a little bit more than the revenues were, about 17.7%. The two categories with the largest variances, public works and capital outlay, again related to Highway 316. So the city's portion being smaller than was anticipated in that budget. Other categories really pretty similar to what you had planned. Questions on the general fund at all? All right, then I will keep moving. We have a couple of slides that take a look at some of your special revenue funds. First of all, fire and ambulance. Revenues in this fund were down with fewer calls. Expenditures actually increased about 10%, related to some vacant positions that had occurred in previous years that were filled in 2021. So overall, your fund balance in this fund did decrease by about $155,000, ending at just over $1.3 billion. And then Parks and Rec is the other special revenue fund that we have information in here for. Revenues down in this fund as well, related to a decrease in the levy, offset by some increases in your park dedication fees. And then expenditures up about $175,000, related to an increase in seasonal employees versus what we saw in 2020 with the pandemic. So overall, this fund did have an increase in fund balance of about $220,000 or 16.2%. And the last set of funds that we're going to look at are your enterprise funds. And in each of these charts, we again give that 5-year perspective, and we look at operating income in two ways. We look at it with depreciation included and with depreciation subtracted out. And we do that because depreciation is a non-cash item. It's the expense of using up those assets that you have in those funds over their useful life. So it's an annual amortization, if you will. So there's a lot of schools of thought as far as what should be covered in your operating revenues, and some cities look at it differently. So we like to give you both perspectives. And for the water fund, each year you have covered both the cash-related operating expenses as well as that depreciation. So revenues were up, related to an increase in rates and also usage. Expenditures or expenses also up, again related to that Highway 316 project. And what you see in these funds, these are full accrual funds, so you have capital assets recorded, but that's not an asset that the city owns. So it's not capitalized, it's expensed on an annual basis. So that's related to the increase there. Similar. Oh. Big bird. That was a very big bird, apparently. I don't think I can top that kind of excitement with the sewer fund. Right? All right, so the sewer fund has covered depreciation for 4 of the 5 years that we're looking at, so each year since 2018. So that's good news. Revenues in this fund also up with rates and usage increases and expenses related to that Highway 316 project again. So overall, positive operating income of $216,000. Stormwater fund, increase in the revenues of about $33,000 related to an increase in the rates. Expenses in this fund almost flat from 2020 to 2021, increasing or decreasing actually just 0.4%. This fund also healthy and covering both those cash-related and depreciation for each of the years that we're looking at. And then the last utility fund, the hydro fund, a much better year in 2021 versus what you saw in 2020. So driven by what happened in 2020, you had an increase in the revenues related to those turbines being more operational in 2021, and then a decrease in the expenses related to fewer repairs and maintenance costs. So overall, this fund operating in a positive, again, both perspectives. And then the last couple of charts I have take a look at tax capacity rates and the tax levies and capacities, and I want to apologize, the headings are on the wrong charts. And I didn't see that before I sent it off to Chris. So this is your tax capacity rates, not the tax capacity and levies. That will follow on the next page. So overall, in the 5 years we're looking at here, you've been able to decrease your tax capacity rate from 62.52 down to 57.35. So each and every year that has gone down. And that is a result of what's going on the next slide. So the green bar on the right is your taxable tax capacity, and that has increased at a greater rate than your tax levy. So if we just look at 2020 to 2021, you had a 4.7% increase in that capacity and a 3.5% increase in your levy. If you look all the way back to 2017, you have a much bigger variance, that tax capacity going up 29.5%, and the levy going up 18.1%, so allowing for that decrease in the rates for your residents. That is what I have. Any questions or anything you'd like more detail on?
Thank you. Any questions, council? Okay, if not, I would accept a motion to accept the 2021 Comprehensive Financial Report. Councilmember Brox, and second by Councilmember Liefeld. Additional new discussion, council? Councilmember Vaughn.
I just want to thank Your Honor, give credit to staff. I mean, to get that report each year, it's really good to hear and understand that there's one thing that we can work on, but we've been working on that for years. And I think this current staff has done a nice job to try to make that better for everybody. So kudos to all the finance staff and all the administration staff for that. Number is impressive when you watch how the slow growth and depreciation, I agree, is a discussion that I made a note here that we should probably have. Because I think it can be confusing, but it also could be to our advantage. So
Yeah,
I think I want to bring that up as a conversation in our finance committee meeting about a potential using it more to our advantage. So
And what that does is allows you to save for the future so that you have a balance, if you will, or a position, if you will, that you can fund some projects without the issuance of debt.
thank you for saying.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Yeah, it was a good setup. All right, all those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails.
All right.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me this time tonight, and I want to thank Chris as well and his staff for being very well prepared this year for the audit. It was pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, under community development tonight, we have a resolution variance for an accessory building on 707 First Street East, Mr. Heselton property, and this is being introduced by Community Development Director John Hinsman.
Thank you,
Welcome,
Mayor.
John.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. I'll give a brief update on the action before you tonight, and then can take questions from you on that. We have a variance before us for 707 East First Street here, which is the map that we're showing here. It's an unusual property from the standpoint from its size. It's a little bit larger than most properties in the area, about 1.2 acres. It contains a home built in 1918 as well as a historic building, an old industrial building built in 1859. The building built in 1859, the Hastings Foundry Iron Star Works building, is on the register, has some unique aspects pertaining to industrial growth in Minnesota, and a nice treasure that we have within the city. What's being asked for by the property owner, Mr. Heselton, is the ability to construct a garage of about 1,000 square feet, which is located in the blue here. Under our current city code, we have a limitation on the number of what we term accessory buildings that could be built on a property. That's limited to 2 buildings up to 1,000 square feet total on a property where you don't have an attached garage. So in a situation here, this building here is already over 3,000 square feet, so it would not be allowed today, and the addition of this would also not be permitted without a variance. So that's what we're considering tonight. Planning Commission did review this on June 13th, did vote 7-0 to recommend approval of the variance with limited discussion. We did not have anyone that addressed the item during the meeting. However, prior to the meeting, we did receive a phone call from a neighbor opposed to construction of another garage on the property. So let's take a closer look at what we're looking at here. This is the Star Ironworks building. You can see behind the building here, there's some accessory structures attached to it that would be removed upon the construction of the new garage if that was to be approved. This is what the garage would look like, kind of a superimposed image of this garage, 1,000 square feet next to the home itself and its relation with the Star Ironworks building, as you see here. So when we take a look at variances, there's certain criteria that we have in order to take action on it. We have to look at a few different things related to practical difficulties, how they fit within the physical surroundings, and essentially, how is this instance different from others that might come forward? So when we look at the variance, we're looking at it not being contrary to the public interest. It has special conditions in a situation where the literal enforcement of the ordinance would preclude general rights that other people would have. In this situation, the Star Ironworks building itself, it doesn't serve well as a garage building for the house, primarily because of the distance between it. It's about 75 feet between the two right now. And we've had other historic buildings within the city that have been used as accessory structures. This one doesn't really fit very well to use this from a practical standpoint. We do believe that this is a unique site, certainly. We don't see too many properties with this type of industrial building on there that's really an adjunct to the home that's near the property. So we do have the conditions of approval and the rationale for granting the variance listed within the resolution for your consideration. With an action on a variance, the City Council is acting as the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. So this is an action that would require 6 of 7 council members to support granting of the variance. And Mr. Heselton is present tonight in the audience if you have any questions for him, and I can stand for any questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any discussion, council? Councilmember Brox.
I just have a question about the size. It seems like 1,000 square feet is a fairly large garage. Do we know what the purpose is behind having a garage that large? Or
Sure.
what it's gonna be used for, other than storing cars or vehicles?
Sure. I may have Mr. Heselton answer that question if he'd like to come up here. We do have garages that are up to 1,000 square feet. Granted, it is a larger garage than some average garages that we do see. I mean, if you take a look at a two-car Star garage, that may be around 500 square feet, 3-car garages being somewhere about 750, 800 square feet, just to give some comparisons. But Mr. Heselton, do you want to address that question at all? If you'd like to come up here too, please. Thanks.
Yes, if you would, just please state your name and your address.
Terry Heselton, 707 East First.
Thank you.
And it'd be for my car and my motorcycles, my vehicles.
Thank you. That's it, unless you want to add anything else. Okay, council, motion to accept has been made, or Councilmember Fulch, okay, and a second by Councilmember Fox. Additional discussion, new discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you. Tonight, we have a resolution for the site plan for Kentucky Fried Chicken, as we've been hearing about on Vermillion Street. And John, you may continue.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Before you tonight is a recommendation from the Planning Commission to approve a KFC restaurant located at the northwest corner of 18th Street and Vermillion Street. So the aerial photo here shows the proposed location. It consists of these 4 lots here. We have a 2011 aerial which shows where the former Freedom gas station stood on the site, as well as the 2021 aerial as we've shown here. What's being proposed is a 3,100 square foot KFC building. The property size itself is about 0.6 acres. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this back on June 13th. We did hear from a couple of residents with concerns about traffic, noise, and odors that would be generated from the facility. We also had representatives from KFC who joined us via Zoom to address some of these comments. Ultimately, the Planning Commission did vote to recommend in a 6-to-1 vote, and that's what's being brought forward to you tonight. So looking at some of the specifics of the property itself, when you take a look at it, it's zoned commercial. It is guided commercial within the comprehensive plan. The area to the west of it is zoned residential. You can see a home here at 122 West 18th Street, another one on 115 West 7th Street that abut the site here. To the north of the site is the new Hastings Dairy Store, the former Sunkist Tanning, Vermillion Street to the east, and then 18th Street to the south here. This is what the site looks like today. You can see the remnants of the former Freedom gas station with a couple of entrances onto 18th Street. The tree line over here looking west towards the residential area, and then Vermillion Street to the north. Picture to the south gives a little closer up view as to where that line would be between the residential property and the commercial property here, and what's in between it. From a site plan perspective, this is what's being proposed, 3,100 square foot KFC restaurant, one entrance coming off of Vermillion Street, which would be what we term a right in, right out. There wouldn't be a break in the median here. Traffic could enter here and exit here. There would be one full access intersection here on 18th Street, which would lead over to Highway 61 at this location. This entrance here would carry traffic through the site with a drive-through line coming from the north, speaker over here, and then queue line and pickup window down at this location. So that's generally how this would lay out. Storage facility or trash facility located at this location here, and also a passageway north to the Hastings Dairy property, which would be a joint access parking lot. So that would be a connection that would be brought through here. So when we take a look at this from an access standpoint, we are fine with the access that is being proposed. It is consolidating access points into a couple of key locations. It consolidates this entrance down here off of 18th Street. I think as we all know here, we are hopeful that in the future, 18th Street will become a controlled intersection on Highway 61, and certainly a part of the topic of conversation we're having as we are going through that study with MnDOT right now. Looking at the building setbacks here within the zoning district itself, commercial zoning districts do not have prescribed building setbacks. What's being proposed here is a building which would be about 28 feet back from the western property line where the residential property is. When you take a look at where that building would be compared to the home to the west, my estimate is someplace around 45 to 55 feet to that home. Between this area, there would be an 8-foot vinyl fence that would be located along the property line, but on the property of KFC. If you go back to the wood line here, looking at the site plan and the removals, most of this would stay within here to try to have as much of tree cover as there is presently on the property. This is what the building would look like here. This is the view here from Vermillion Street, the view to the west, south from 18th Street, and north as you go into the property. It does meet our architectural standards on that. So really the key aspects that we were looking at here was, the positioning of this property, how it impacts the areas to the west, and what's really within our jurisdiction from a review standpoint and an ordinance standpoint here. We took a look at the Vermillion Street development plan in looking at this site as well. The Vermillion Street plan has a couple of items that touch base on this one. I mean, one in particular is, looking at uses of the site itself. It does point out that restaurants are an appropriate use. From a built form standpoint, it wants to have buildings that are located at similar distances back from Highway 61 as adjoining businesses, and also to facilitate joint access between businesses. So the aerial map here doesn't show it all the way, but you can see this is the Hastings Dairy Suncast Tan building with this access way going through. That would be consistent with the Vermillion Street plan. When you take at other aspects, there's some aspects of the Vermillion Street plan that are contradictory. One of them deals with having buildings that are set the same way. The other one is having buildings with the parking and the loading that are located, putting the building towards the front with the parking towards the rear or to the side. In this situation here, we as staff looked at the siting of this building with a lot of care to try to figure out how best that this property could fit the Vermillion Street guidelines, and also ended up with the plan that we show here today. So that was taken into consideration. When we take a look at the built form of the Vermillion Street plan, the plan itself provides some aspirational documents as far as what could be built on there. It's not prescriptive to say this is what must be built there. That's something that comes out of the zoning code itself. From the zoning code, this meets the requirements of that. From the Vermillion Street plan, there's certain aspects of that in which it's more aspirational, in which a developer could do this, and this is something that we may desire, but from an ordinance standpoint, we do not have the regulatory authority to go in that direction. So I can stand for any questions that you may have. I'm not sure, Dan, if we have anyone from KFC on Zoom at this point. They had indicated that they may join us. I don't believe there's any from KFC in the audience here, so I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, John. There is a raised hand on Zoom. Or there was.
What's that? Yes.
Okay. Council Member Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. John, can you go back to the sketch? Can you show me where the garbage was located again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Garbage location would be right here in this block.
Okay, so the drive-through is between, okay, so I'm just checking, it's not on the property line, on the fence line back there.
Correct, yeah. And it would be, we have a requirement that it be a covered facility and with walls on it as well. Gate.
You know, I really appreciated listening to what everyone had to say, and it puts me in a weird position. This is my neighborhood. This is my old stomping grounds. I grew up there. I can tell you an awful lot about every corner in that area. Starting with 19th Street, cutting through the alleyway behind Friar Tuck's on my bicycle. Getting nailed by a pole that was back there and flying off the front of my Huffy. No, the pole didn't move. I like to think the sun was in my eyes. Next street up was, I'll always think of it as Erickson's. My mom used to give me a note, and I would ride my bike over there, my Huffy, and I would get her smokes. Because you could do that as a kid back then. And I remember the people who hung out there. I remember the people who hung out outside. I remember what, I think the old folks back then called them riffraff. The hoodlums that hung out there. I remember buying my first bedroom set from the furniture store across the street. My brother working at KDWA upstairs and climbing those stairs in the middle of winter to go up to the radio station. I went to Cooper School. I remember I'm gonna forget the name, the supper club, Gregory's, thank you. I remember the supper club. And I'm trying to remember all the things that were through there, the body shop, working our way up. I worked at Hutch's Video. M&H was my favorite spot, and it's not the M&H everyone knows it was today. Back then, I'd ride my bike over there, and I think for 35 cents, I'd get a cheeseburger. And I'd ride my bike home, no hands, because I would eat my cheeseburger on the way home. I've got a lot of memories on that street, and it's not what it used to be, and we need to let it develop. If I could wish something else would go there, absolutely. Development is important in Hastings. Businesses are important in Hastings. And despite some comments about their, M&H or the gas station, Erickson's closed Due to, they didn't close due to loss of revenue. They had an outdated building. There was a lot of competition. You know, look down in the next corner down there at the stoplight. There was a lot of competition, and they couldn't compete. And rather than putting the money into it, it's been sitting there now for 7 years. 2015, they closed their doors. I, again, would love to see something different. I'd love to see a little mom and pop shop open up there. You know, you have to have someone who wants to build. You have to have someone who has the money for it. This isn't one of the vacant buildings, thank goodness, right? It's down, it's torn down, it's not an eyesore. I go home almost every day. I turn on 18th Street. You might see me in either my little red convertible or on my little red scooter. That's my direction. I go there every day. I would like to ask John a question, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm wondering if we have any data that would suggest or give us numbers on any increase in traffic on 17th Street from the Quick Trip. I know that was a big concern when Quick Trip came in there was, oh my gosh, all the traffic we're going to send down 17th Street. Do we have anything, John, at all that would suggest?
Councilmember, I don't have any concrete data on
Okay.
that. Just from a phone call that we may get here, I'm not aware of really any calls that we've received from neighbors complaining about traffic increases due to that. It certainly generates a lot of traffic, but no, I'm not aware of anything. We haven't really studied anything.
You know, and I'm not a traffic expert, neither are you guys. Looking at that and thinking, the people that are going to go, it's kind of like getting out a subway up the road, right? You go across and you whip a U-E to get back to go the other direction, because the intersection's there's too much traffic. So it's gonna be the same thing. People are gonna exit out of KFC on 61, either go south or do their U-turn to go north, which is pretty much what you do at Quick Trip too, because the traffic is so fast there. I feel really sympathetic to what you're saying. I know they've come a long way in regards to air pollution, you know, that sort of thing as far as the smells go for venting and that. I am going to support this, and not because I don't love the community, because I do, and business brings business. And clearly KFC sees something in Hastings, because they are, in the last 6 years, one of the leading, you know, franchises in the world. And clearly they see something in Hastings. Will I still get my chicken at M&H? Probably. But I am going to support it. And I greatly appreciate all of you taking the time. Speaking up here is hard to do. Takes a lot of courage and, you know, takes a lot of guts, and you probably have a pounding headache from it if you're anything like me. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to speak about it and let you know that I'm not voting yes for the, you know, I've given great thought to this. And I feel comfortable and happy that they've decided to make a home here, just like Fleet Farm and all the other businesses that we're bringing into town. So with that, I'll yield and let someone else speak, but I want to thank you all for taking the time to come here and talk.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Councilmember Brox.
John, I just have a couple questions. Maybe you could help explain kind of how we assess traffic impact. And when we're going through the process of development, when we look at these plans, what are some of the things that we look at, and how do we assess how traffic is going to impact a neighborhood and make recommendations back to the business? I just think it would be helpful for everybody to hear the process that we use, because maybe that could clear up some of the concern. Because I agree with Councilmember Liefeld. I see traffic going in and out 61, and there's probably people in Hastings that are going to go back on 18th Street, but it'd be people like me and Councilmember Liefeld who have mopeds and can't drive on Highway 61, so we have to go the other direction. So how do we assess traffic impacts, and when we're looking at these site plans, and decide to give feedback along those lines?
Sure. We take a look at traffic impacts on a commercial development like this. We take a look, first of all, at the roads that are adjacent to it and their capacity to handle traffic. Obviously, 61 is a major roadway, the highest volume roadway we have in the city, has that capacity. Then we take a look at how people would access onto that roadway. At 18th Street here, as everyone knows, you can technically get onto Vermillion Street with a left-hand turn, albeit in some points during the day, it's nearly impossible to do so. And so people do it a couple of different ways. They will either take more risks to cross this, they will go take a right to take a U-turn, or they may cut through the neighborhood there. As far as the dispersation of those trips and what goes where, we haven't done that type of analysis on this facility here. We do believe that most of the traffic is going to enter and exit at this 18th and Vermillion Street intersection. Not to say that there may be increase in traffic going west on 18th Street. 18th Street is termed a collector road within the city of Hastings. It's a state aid road, so it is designed to carry a little more traffic, certainly not any volumes consistent with Highway 61, but it is a road that's designed to carry increased traffic.
Thank you. And then my follow-up question is just what entity governs the appropriate trash storage? So if someone was noticing that the trash was not being stored appropriately, for some reason there was a smell or an order, who would they tell?
I guess that would be community development.
It would be you.
It would be me, yes. One of those duties to be assigned, I guess. But in all seriousness, I mean, we do have requirements under our property management that talk about smells, odors, making sure that things are kept in a way that they're not going to attract vermin and other things in there. So we have certain requirements that they would be compelled to follow on that one, and if they don't, we would have our code enforcement officer able to assist on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brox. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do disagree with the 61 exit. I think people will get in there from 61, but I feel like if you're in the drive-through, you're being told to go down to 18 the way this is designed. There's not a lot of room for you to get, maybe 2 cars can be lined up before you're going like this to get back onto 18 or whatever, but I would encourage you to look at the map a little bit there. I think the drive-through makes you go onto 18. But question, John, is there a requirement that there's 2 access points, 2 individual separate access points? If this wasn't a corner, one might imagine that it would just be 61 on and off, and that's it. That's part one. And then the other thing is, what's the thought on someone that wants to go north after exiting? Because I feel like there might be some interesting U-turn situations there in an already very odd intersection. So has that been mapped out?
Sure. To your first question, council member, no, there's not a requirement to have more than one entrance on here. We take a look at these type of properties. We're obligated to give one entrance on here, and then we take a look at the impact of other entrances. When we look at Vermillion Street, there's a plethora of entrances that are up and down it, and we've taken a goal to be able to reduce the entrances onto Vermillion Street, which this one does. I think there's 2 on this site existing, and it would bring it down to a single one. And then onto 18th Street, there's 2 existing, would bring it down to a single one there. So hopefully that answers the first part of your question. As far as the second part of your question in traffic and how it would move through there, agree that there is likely people that are going to go west on 18th Street to go north someplace to 15th to take a left at the light. It's certainly much easier to do that than it is to try to take a left turn onto 18th Street in various areas of the day. From a right turn standpoint, I think if you're going to go south on Vermillion Street, you're going to go down to 18th and get onto Vermillion, and that's not going to be terribly problematic. As we've been planning for Vermillion Street improvements for years, we've been looking at that 18th Street intersection as a candidate for a stoplight. And we've impressed that upon MnDOT as we were going through the Vermillion Street study right now for the improvements coming in 26.
Okay. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. John, at the beginning of your presentation, you began to mention, I think what my question is, when we adopted the Vermillion Corridor Plan, we had hoped, and it was actually, it was a pull forward from the previous Vermillion plan, that buildings would be built up against the highway with the parking in the back. And, you know, I would feel a lot better about flipping this site plan so that the drive-through was actually, you know, going along, you know, the highway, and that the building itself was closer to the road, because that was the design that we, as a city, for the last 20 years, had been hoping that the the buildings would be built up against the highway. And so it seems so unfair to me that drive-through is going to be up against someone's home right on the other side of the fence. It just makes me think of the Dairy Queen drive-through and that little house that's right there right now. I felt so sorry for the gentleman who was living there, that his home was kind of, you know, violated by having that drive-through right, you know, up against his. So was there any discussion about flipping this site plan to a different, like layout, so that it wasn't causing the drive-through to go up against the residents right behind it?
Sure. Councilmember, internally, we did have that discussion, and frankly, we took an image of the restaurant and kind of flipped it around different ways in this lot here to try to figure out how best it would work. We're dealing with a very narrow situation here as far as the width between Vermillion Street and then areas to the west here. We did look at a configuration that would have basically things flipped. What that would do is have the parking in this location here that would be adjacent to residences. And it's a give and take on that one. I've heard in other situations, I remember when we looked at CVS a few years ago, that people were hesitant to have parking behind there and adjacent just because of loitering traffic and the noise of people that might be sitting there in their vehicles, and that would be more detrimental. So it's a give and take on that one. The property itself is certainly going to have impacts on the neighbors there. It's been maybe zoned and designated commercial, but there is a residential neighborhood next door. So you try to figure out what the best way to set this thing up, and this is ultimately what we landed on.
Oh, that you agreed to, that this was the better of the situation. I have to agree, though, that this is a terrible intersection. This is just a death trap waiting to happen. I mean, honestly, it's bad, and I'm really concerned about traffic, because you can't take a left turn there. And even if we closed off 18th Street West, you know, so that folks couldn't exit onto that street, and it forced them, to if they wanted to go southbound on Highway 61, they would have to do a U-turn. And there's semis coming in and out of the mill there as well, so you always have bad traffic situations. I live on Tyler Street, between 18th Street and 15th Street, and I avoid this intersection at all costs. Too many near misses, and I'm not alert enough, to navigate it. So, I think it's really troubling. And so, what is our purview as a council here to denying this? Because if someone, I always struggle, because someone has bought this parcel of land and they have the right to develop it, and it is a commercial lot. And so there's always this balancing act, and Councilmember Liefeld was completely right that it has for way too long sat vacant with nothing on it, and so it's great that someone's considering it, but without having, without addressing that intersection until 2026, that's so far off. If this would be constructed sometime, I'm imagining like in the next 9 months or something to that effect.
I presume, yeah.
Yeah, so then we have at least 3 or 4 years of that intersection situation. So what are our powers here? Because I feel like we're being asked to either vote it up or vote it down.
Sure. What we take a look officially is our zoning code. The zoning code lays out the regulations for development. From a use standpoint, through our zoning map, we have certain zones in which uses are allowed or not allowed. And this is a use in which it's allowed within. We dig deeper within there to go, okay, under the certain parameters of site development, from an architecture, landscaping, traffic, parking, those type of things. We have specific regulations to review as far as these types of developments. And when we look at our site plan regulations that look at development of facilities like this, it meets the requirements of that. So from a land use standpoint, I think that our options of denial are quite limited in this one. If we're in a situation in which a development meets the requirements of our zoning code, unless there's something that it does not meet the requirements of there, I think that we're compelled to approve this. When we're in a situation when we're balancing this against the Vermillion Street corridor plan here, that itself does not have the same power as the zoning code. The zoning code is law. The Vermillion Street development plan is an aspirational document. It has its use, it's reviewed, but it does not have the force of law within there. And more of it was designed in showing people how sites could develop and making them and having them the option of how this could be developed and to be used by us as city staff, especially with HEDRA in the development of properties that we're acquiring, so that we can guide ourselves on that one.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Councilmember Fox?
Thank you, Your Honor. John, thank you for clarifying all of that. In our pre-meeting discussion, City Administrator Waticha and I discussed just that, because my concern is the intentionality of the use of space with this corner. This site really should match with the potential that the Vermillion Street corridor plan could have. So that's what we spent a lot of time talking about earlier today. I too will be supporting this plan and am very grateful for all of your comments. However, I'm still curious about some of the intentionality with, like I said, the Vermillion Street corridor plan, but also I'm taking in other plans to consideration, like the people movement plan, and making sure that traffic is safe and making sure that pedestrians could potentially be safe in this area and in this corridor. So those were some of the conversations we had before the meeting. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councilmember Fox. Councilmember Vaughn?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I do hear what the neighbors are saying, because if you look at, even when we did CVS, that drive-through backed up to a street. It didn't back up to a backyard, as someone was saying. But I'm agreeing with staff too, is this property has been zoned, it's set up, there's not a whole lot that we can say that against it. But I can tell you one thing that we do need to make a stink about is that stoplight. We have talked about that since I used to live in Manor Court. It's a dangerous place, it needs to be down, told the MnDOT that we need a stoplight there for the safety of our residents, just like what we did on 316. We made it safer. We need to make this area safer also. Ryan's not here today, but I think it's important for us to know when that 18th Street's gonna get redone, because I think that needs a sidewalk. If I lived there, I wouldn't be happy with kids. I want a place where those kids feel safe walking down that sidewalk when they do leave this place. I really think the KFC picks this spot because of the 30,000 cars that go through it. I think they're trying to intercept that traffic that's going through town. And I think they're gonna go in and they're gonna keep going when they're on that side of the road. If they're coming from the other side, they're gonna want that stoplight to come in and out of there. That's my personal opinion. KFC hasn't said that to me, but I think that's important. Some of the things I think we need to watch, though, is the hours of operation. Because I don't think that KFC should be at 24/7, and I don't know if it's being proposed that way, but that drive-through shouldn't be running that late. I shouldn't have a car idling past 10 o'clock in that area. I shouldn't have to hear a microphone of someone taking their order. I think that's important. I think we can help with that restriction. I'm looking at John for that. I don't know if we can put that into the operation plan. But I think those are things that we can help on, that we have to make sure, yes, I agree, Councilor Fulch, today it's not good. But we got some plans here that have to help these residents say stoplights are important, sidewalks are important, people movement plans are important. That is something that we have to keep an eye on to make sure it does not, MnDOT is not gonna say, no, we're just moving people through. I'm not gonna put a stoplight there. we really need to stand up saying, no, it's that important to us that a stoplight goes there, in my opinion, so.
Yep. Thank you,
Thank you, Your
Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. First off, is KFC still on the phone? Can we inquire about the thoughts of there being a 24-hour location, if that's something we need to be concerned about, or if it's a non-issue?
Just looking.
While we're waiting on that, just to point out a couple things. I mean, again, we're talking about high traffic of people who don't even live here, right? Coming in and out, back and forth, staying on 61. The rest of us are well aware of how dangerous Highway 61 really is, right? How many times have you left Applebee's or Las Margaritas and turned around and went back out the other direction? Because you could not get across the street there, period, right? Same thing up Domino's when there was the gas station next door. You never got out right there. You turned around and you went back up. Same thing leaving Subway. You know, so that whole section, we're all aware how to handle it because we live here, right? It's those people coming out that are like, they're gonna get to that stop sign and be like, oh my God, how am I gonna get out of here? And I'm not gonna lie, I sort of, I like to live dangerously and I like to go to that intersection because I'm awfully patient. And I'll sit and I'll have friends in the car and they're like, why on earth do you come to this intersection? I'm like, why not? I live right down the street, why wouldn't I? But I'm patient, right? I'm gonna wait. So there's a lot of intersections that we have to deal with. And that's definitely something that we're talking to MnDOT about. This is not the only one, it is definitely one of them. Sightline is perfect though, however, you can see very well both directions. So if you're patient and you know what you're doing in your vehicle, you're gonna get across safely, right? Because it's wide open. But I am very curious to know if there's, based on Councilmember Vaughn's question, is that something we need to even be concerned about? I'm not aware of any, if there are 24-hour.
Sure. And I'm not sure if there's anyone responding to that, but based on, I think, the conversations we've had with KFC in the past, it's not designed to be a 24-hour store on that one. And if KFC wants to confirm that or can confirm that online, that might be helpful.
Is that something we can regulate as a city?
I'm looking at our esteemed city attorney there for any assistance on that question.
Your Honor, members of the council, it is a reasonable condition to control when it's directly adjacent to residential property, to put some parameters on, for example, the hours, as long as it's a reasonable hour of operation of the drive-through. I wouldn't say the internal store, but the part that is directly adjacent to the residential property. It's definitely appropriate to address screening, making sure that the headlights are not going to be shining directly into any of those homes. So whether that's through the trees that are there, or I know there's a fence that's proposed as well. So it is an appropriate condition as long as it's a reasonable condition and you're not saying you got to shut down at 6 o'clock at night. If it's 11 o'clock at night, that might be more reasonable. But I would be really interested to find out what the store intends, how it intends to operate.
Thank you. Their general hours do state 10:30 to 10:30 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's every day of the week. Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you, Councilmember Liefeld. Councilmember Fultz, did you want to?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
Okay.
We have a Shannon Smith.
Okay. We have a
May have an audio issue.
Shannon
Looks like
Smith.
she's trying to speak. We're not getting any audio.
Okay. I will say, so I did watch the planning meeting, and they were very conscientious of the things that you were considering, and so I think Kentucky Fried would, do the proper things to try to avoid any, nuisance for the neighborhood. I mean, we do want to see Hastings develop, and we do want to see growth, and it's hard I live in a neighborhood like yours, but I don't have any area around me that can be developed. So, but when you're on a Highway 61, you're gonna see development, and in today's world, let's face it, it is fast food. That's what people want. 55 has more of it for us, but it's we may see more on 61. Can we get, oh, I see Shannon is there. Can we hear her? Can she type in the,
Shannon, we don't seem to be getting audio from you. Can you type into the chat maybe?
Dan, I can't hear you. I can see that you're talking.
we can hear you.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
Great. Sorry about that. Okay. Well, hello. My name is Shannon Smith. I'm with Bowler Engineering, the consulting firm that prepared these plans and this application for KFC. It is my understanding that KFC is also online, but I wanted to reassure you that this is not planned to be a 24-hour establishment, and that screening was a very large consideration in the design of this plan. A large reason that the building is located where it is was in an effort to preserve as many of those trees that are existing there today as we can. You know, they're large, they provide a lot of foliage, and there is an existing fence along part of the property line, but as already mentioned, we are proposing to install an 8-foot vinyl fence along the entire property line, which is an upgraded material and height as well for screening purposes. And we will be adding additional trees there as well. I believe we're removing one tree that is currently existing closer to the center of the site, not really along that buffer strip, but more so where the dumpster is going.
Thank you, Shannon. Any additional questions for Shannon, Council? Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. Shannon, I'm curious, did you do any analysis in regards to the traffic flow leaving your facility? There's a lot of concern about the safety of the intersection of 18th Street and Highway 61. If someone is trying to go northbound on Highway 61 from your proposed site, and you know, it is a very dangerous intersection, and I'm really concerned about it. Have you considered actually removing the entrance onto 18th Street? So forcing people to exit an entrance directly onto Highway 61 to avoid folks from taking a direct left-hand turn there on 18th Street, just considering the volumes that are going to be going through there?
So to answer your question, your first question, we, from a high-level perspective as engineers, we have considered what traffic increase will be here. We considered the fact that it used to be a gas station and convenience store and the traffic that would have produced, and there's been traffic there before, I guess is what I'm getting at. So that's part of our consideration. And then we actually do have a traffic trip generation letter being prepared for our MnDOT permits, but that is not something that is complete at this time. It's more so just an official letter stating what I said. I can't speak to what those results exactly are, as it's not complete. But again, that's for our MnDOT permits.
And I'm sorry, so the MnDOT permit is so that you can have the curb cut directly onto Highway 61 there?
Yes, so as John mentioned, there's currently 2 curb cuts existing along Vermillion on this property. So we'll be consolidating that to 1 curb cut, but yes, they'll be reviewing for us to have a driveway along their street and for the improvement the improvement that it'll take to put in that driveway and to make sure that it conforms with their standards.
When you have conversations with MnDOT, I understand that you're looking at your curb cut directly to access the site, but when folks leave the site and they have to go through that intersection at 18th, has MnDOT talked at all about doing any kinds of improvements for safety for folks as they're traveling through that particular intersection?
So our process with MnDOT is not very far along yet. I personally have not had conversations with them. The city planner, the staff of the city have forwarded along our site plan and grading plans and the same plans that were sent to the city so that MnDOT got an opportunity to comment on it early on as some sort of preliminary review, and as a part of their comments, they've asked for further coordination and permits.
Yeah, and I can address that a little bit further too, Councilmember and Shannon. I mean, when we're dealing with these type of site plans, we provide notice to MnDOT as far as giving them the opportunity to review, and they've presented an initial review letter on this. I think what Shannon's speaking to is the official permit that's generated from that letter. In general terms, when we're taking a look at MnDOT and their allowances for access onto sites, they take a look at consolidating accesses as being a primary motive, which is being done in this location. If they were to do anything at this intersection, or at this site, they would close off the access potentially onto 61, because that's going on to their highway itself and would leave everything coming off of 18th Street. Do I believe that's going to happen? I don't. I mean, based upon other things that occur, they've kept these things available because they serve purposes instead of consolidating too much at one location. But I just wanted to assure the council that we've had conversations not only with MnDOT review staff on the site plan, but also on MnDOT review staff as far as the Highway 61 corridor. They've both looked specifically at this.
But MnDOT's not intending to do anything about it in the near term.
I'm not aware of any changes to the intersection from MnDOT, no. I believe what they're looking at is this planning document that we're working on right now, driving improvements for Highway 61 when they do those in 2026. Does that preclude them from doing those sooner if necessary? I can't answer that question, but that's what we're planning for right now.
Thank you, Council. Additional discussion? Yes.
Can I just add one comment? What, if this is coming in, what can the council do for the residents to ensure that it will not block off on 61 and only allow exit and entry on 18th? Because now that you said that that could be a possibility, how do you ensure that that does not happen? Can you do anything in regards to that as a proposal? Or is that a possibility? Because I feel like that changes that site.
Your Honor, members of the council, I feel like I need to jump in here, because when you start talking about taking driveways, you're taking rights away from this property owner, and then you're going to be paying them compensation for it. So, first of all, Highway 61 is not within the city's jurisdiction. They cannot control the access. Thank you, property owner, for being willing to consolidate two into one, because they could have kept two. 18th Street, they have two accesses today. They could be entitled to keep both of them. They've chosen to consolidate to one. If we want to make them close that one, we need to get out our checkbook and pay for it.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion, Council? If not, I'd accept a motion to approve a resolution of the City Council of the City of Hastings granting site plan approval to construct a KFC restaurant at 1726 Vermillion Street. Councilmember Brox. And a Councilmember Liefeld with a second. New discussion, Council. All those in favor of that motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And one. Okay, and that motion still prevails. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Under administration, we have a DBA Music Series, and for the site, we have City Administrator Dan Waticha.
You guys enjoy your night. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe it was back in May, the City Council approved a special event permit for the Downtown Business Association to have their music series. Essentially, it's a couple of evenings, a couple of Friday evenings each month through the summer. They close the first block of 2nd Street to to traffic. However, the 5 restaurant bars located in this block, their licensed premises for serving alcohol or for their customers to consume is their existing footprint. Essentially, the building, the sidewalk cafe if they have one, and the parklet if they have one. And the question came up after this permit was approved. Council asked to have this on a upcoming agenda tonight, saying, is there the ability, should there be the ability to expand that footprint essentially so that people could be served and consume alcohol in a larger footprint on the sidewalk or in this closed block of street. Essentially, somebody could sit on at a bistro table on a parklit patio, but they can't sit on a bench on the sidewalk just a few feet away. So that's essentially what got us here and what the question is. There certainly is some legal ability to do that, but basically what it would come down to is with each of those licensed facilities needing to approve an enlargement of their licensed premises area, the footprint that they're allowed to serve, or at least on those evenings of the event. It would mean that, assuming it was approved for all 5 of the establishments, that there'd be a lot of overlap, during that, within that common street sidewalk area. Anybody's customers could be served and consuming. But I think that those are details that could certainly be worked out. Staff's concerns, particularly in talking with the police department, but also other departments, is a setup like that is beyond the scope of what was previously approved. When we have other larger events, we require them to have the event or the licensed beer garden area being fenced off, something more than just traffic cones at the end of the street, at the intersection. So certainly want to hear council's thoughts on, is this a direction you want to go, if there's any particular concerns to what might be allowed, but the recommendation is refer this back to staff to meet with the Downtown Business Association, the 5 establishments that might have their licenses expanded, and see what would be able to be worked out in order to expand those footprints and maintain control of this one block area, control the site so that we don't have liquor walking down the street away from the site or coming from other places into the site. Need to have that site control. I can certainly take questions or open it up for your own discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Councilmember Brooks.
May I suggest that we refer this item back to staff and a committee of the council, like the Public Safety Committee, to discuss all the details of it and then bring a full proposal back to the council? I just feel like there's a lot of legal language in here. We have to be compliant with Minnesota state statutes, and I feel like there's a lot of legal implications to a lot of what I'm reading here that we haven't flushed out. So I would like to see this go through at least staff and then probably the Public Safety Committee of the council before it comes back for approval.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Liefeld?
I'll make that my motion.
Oh, okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. And Councilmember Vaughn. Discussion, council.
Whatever committee goes to, I think it needs a lot of time. Personally, I don't support it. I think we've been through this with our last legal counsel, and there's a reason we created what we created, even to get across the sidewalk, to get to the parklets. Now we'll just do it in a street. It's like a street dance. That's when somebody's insurance takes over everything. Well, now when you start having insurance companies cover you would cover this area. We got a lot of finger pointing on a city street, a city asset. I don't support that. I don't understand the value of it, because I also want to make sure when I hear DBA, I never see the vote from DBA from all the members. I hear from the bar owners, those 5 that we're talking about, but I want to make sure that closing down the street already, there's residents around there. I think it throws up an orange cone effect, like, well, I'm going to skip going down there. There's traffic to go through. I think those are all the things I always have concern when we shut down streets. That's why we built this riverfront. That's what that space is for. Rent that space down at the riverfront, bring your music down there, whatever it is. I think we allow alcohol beverages to be brought in there. That's more what I suggest. I'll support going to a committee on it, but I want the legal side of it looked at, because I think that's a city asset that takes a lot of liability on the rest of the residents in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vaughn. Additional discussion, council? All those in favor of the motion? Oh, Councilmember Lightfoot.
I'd like to hear from our city attorney.
Your Honor, members of the council, there certainly are different mechanisms if the council would support this, that we can attempt to cover the liability and the responsibility through an encroachment agreement. And I don't remember from May 2nd what the application was that was improved and all of the things that went in that for closing down the street. Did we give them an encroachment agreement to have the street shut down so that so perhaps that would be an avenue we could pursue that would require insurance. I agree with you, it gets a little confusing when you have people coming from 5 different places. If there is an incident, whose insurance? But that's for the insurance companies to figure out, as long as they're all indemnifying the city, that, gives us some protection. But you're right, it is very fraught with legal issues. So I think I definitely support that there's a lot more discussion that needs to happen, and I would suggest the council be involved, staff be involved, and then ultimately these 5 bar owners be involved to find out if they would do they even want it?
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Councilmember Lightfoot, did you want to add to that?
For Councilmember Vaughn's position about the Rotary building the pavilion, being able to rent that, this isn't entirely different. It brings a really eclectic crowd down to 2nd Street on Friday nights. I've been down there many nights just to kind of check it out. And what I was seeing the issue being is there's not space for the people. The 4 patios that are on 2nd Street, they're full. There isn't a spot to grab a drink and go out and listen to the music because there isn't space to be in a parklet because they're full, which is awesome. That's what we want to see. We want to see that. And I've had many people, and I bring my lawn chair and I sit out in the street. But I can't drink out there, which, fine, whatever. But there's a lot of people saying, hey, I just want to grab a beer and sit and listen to this music. So that's really where this stemmed from. Conversations that I had with multiple, 3 of the 5 bars in question. I've had conversations with them about this. And it's more just a matter of, and this is a 6 to 9 o'clock thing, by the way, too. This isn't a street dance. This isn't, loud, multiple bands playing for hours. This is a 6 to 9 p.m. Kids are drawing chalk figures in the street. It's family friendly, it's a little bit different than that. But I am very curious, as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, bring that back. I do want to know what the DBA says about this. In talking with the chief of police myself, wanting to make sure that we're not making more work for them, right? So how does the DBA feel about this? Maybe it's putting 4 people, 1 on each of the corners, to be like, yeah, you can't walk down to, the depot with that, or you can't, So that's something that I'm interested to hear from the DBA on. So as the chair of the Public Safety Committee, highly support it coming back to us and seeing what we can vet out and get some more direction. Thank you, Your Honor.
Councilmember Lightfoot. There is a motion, there's a second. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion, state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Any announcements, council? Okay, I have a few. Tomorrow, June 21st, as we know, is Make Music Day with 12 performers over 12 hours at 4 locations. Bring a blanket or a chair to enjoy the live music from talented musicians in Hastings Parks. Summer programs at the Levy, Thursday, June 23rd, Music in the Park with the Southern Express Band, supported by Ruth and George Doffing Charitable Funds. Friday, June 24th, is Movies in the Park with Encanto, sponsored by Ardent Mills. Please bring a non-perishable food donation for Hastings Family Service. Tuesday, June 28th, performances in the park will be a comic, magician, and illusionist, sponsored by Smead. Thursday, June 30th, Music in the Park with Sawyer's Dream, supported by the Ruth and George Doffing Charitable Fund. The City Parks and Recs and Police Departments are partnering with Hastings Prescott Area Council to serve up some fun for youth in Hastings. The Rec plus Art plus Police program will offer free activities, treats, and giveaways this summer. The first event is Wednesday, June 22nd, from 1 to 2 at Levy Park, with a hula hoop contest, DJ, games, and crystal magic art, recommended for tweens and teens, supported by SC Toys and Country Financial. City offices will be closed Monday, July 4th, in observance of Independence Day and in appreciation to the Hastings Golf Club for organizing a 4th of July parade at 6:30 p.m. from Seas Church, then eastbound on 15th and ending at Westview Drive, following by live music, then fireworks at 10 p.m. And a special appreciation goes to Vermillion Bank and Hastings Golf Club for the fireworks. Coming up soon, Councilmember Fulch has a birthday.
I do, I'm gonna be 28.
Meetings coming forth are Tuesday, June 21st. The Heritage Preservation Commission has been canceled. Wednesday, June 22nd, Arts Task Force at 6 p.m. Monday, June 27th, Planning Commission at 7 p.m. And Tuesday, July 5th, City Council regular meeting at 7 p.m. We wish you all a very safe and happy 4th of July and start of the summer
Missed one
tomorrow.
Missed one item?
Just one item. Yes, Councilmember Fulch.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I had an announcement and I didn't tell you in advance. I just wanted to share with the council what had happened at the last Dakota Broadband Board meeting. It was extremely, it was extremely disappointing. There's a technical advisory group, and there was a task force of that group who was just going to make recommendations about how to reform the joint powers agreement for the DBB so that it could just be focused on the cities continuing to collaborate on the maintenance of all the fiber assets for all of the cities in the county. And what had happened, and I think I shared this, or at least Dan had shared it with you all, I had sent an email that the Dakota County Board had given staff the direction that they wanted to leave the Dakota Broadband Board, which is really startling. And just so y'all know, like all the joint powers groups that the county has, like they're all dissolving. Like the agreement that goes over, the dispatch, the 911, that's dissolving, and now the county board has decided to withdraw from this as well, and it gives it shifts all the authority, all the leverage to the county to decide where it is that assets will be deployed within individual agreements with all the cities. It's really very disturbing. And so what happened then at the last meeting was there was a couple key players, one of which was County Board member Liz Workman and then Lakeville Council member Luke Hellier, they had made motions to not even listen to what this advisory group was going to suggest for reforming the Joint Powers Group. They just made motions to completely dissolve the Dakota Broadband Board. And they actually have more leverage in the voting because they have the majority of the assets. So it's between Burnsville, Lakeville, and Burnsville, Lakeville, and then the county. And those three, they've made it very clear that they are not interested in staying in the joint powers. And what's really, really shocking is that in all of the conversations that we've ever had, the technical advisory group, which is made up of staff, the staff have continually reiterated all the benefits of the collaboration and everyone working together, and how we would have been positioned as a leader within our state, you know, to have been successful in having this collaboration with, and just the ability for the larger agencies to be able to help those of us that are smaller, like Hastings, right, where we have so much potential, and there are others as well, right? And so it was really discouraging to see suddenly this shift where staff weren't being listened to at all. At all. It was just a complete, blatant disregard for the advice that the professional staff were giving the group, and just politically motivated to dissolve the group for ideological purposes. And so I just wanted to share with you, y'all, so that you're aware of what's going on and how disappointing it is. We did conduct the last project that we did is we conducted a survey to get input from businesses and residents about how it is that they feel about their fiber connections. And so hopefully soon I'll have that to share with you, because I was helping to promote it locally so that we get as much input as we could. So we got something out of being in this group, and so we'll share that coming up. But it'll be something for Attorney Land to be aware of, that it's gonna be a mess unraveling all of that group. And I truly hope that we are taking very close note of all the taxpayer funds that are gonna be wasted in the disassembly of this group in the end. It's really a tragedy. So anyhow, I wish I had better news to share with you, but it is what it is at this point. So thanks for your support in the DBB in the past. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Fulch. Anyone else? Any other announcements? Okay, I have a motion to adjourn. Councilmember Liefeld and Councilmember Brox. No discussion. All those in favor of the motion state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed to that motion state by saying nay. And that motion prevails. Thank you.